Hello,
Hi,
what's your name?
I'm Geoff.
Hi Geoff. And where did you grow up and where do you live now?
I grew up in the U.S. I grew up in the Northeast U.S. in New Hampshire. Stayed up just above Massachusetts in Boston. And now I live in the UK, of all places, in
Nice.
Leicester.
And what's been the main spiritual or contemplative practice of your life, whether it be meditation, yoga or something else?
That's a hard one for me to answer kind of simply because I feel like, yoga is a hard word to define to begin with. I think a lot of people have, their own ideas about what yoga is. I came into, what I share now professionally as a yoga practice by way of more particular meditation practice. So what's most important? I could just say generally yoga, but it very much includes meditation practice.
What was the moment that caught you?
I've always been spiritually inclined, interested. I grew up in a Catholic family, and I always found that inspiring. And I stayed with that for quite a while. I was never, I never felt like it was, a particular focus of my life, but it was always kind of what inspired me to try to live a good life. But I never felt any particular day-to-day direction from that. And then eventually, getting older and, meeting the challenges that come with, growing up and working and family and things like that, I had some kind of interest in meditation, and I wasn't particularly sure where that came from or why I felt compelled to be interested in that. But I was just pointed in the direction of it, that a Tibetan teacher was going to be in town. I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah at this point. And I went, and he gave a couple other teachings over the rest of the weekend, and I kept going back, and that was it for that. I committed to that and really kind of made that a big part of my life. Still, I had no kind of professional interest in this kind of thing. I was an architect, and so this was something I just tried to dedicate myself to when I could, as much as I could. And then one thing led to another, as it does, and I really wasn't happy being an architect. I love architecture, but I just knew it wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I tried to kind of find my new direction from there. I'd always loved art, so I was interested in maybe finding an arts organization I could work for. I moved to Austin, Texas, and which is a really progressive town and full of art, but it just wasn't working out. I wasn't finding anything I was particularly interested in. And at that point, I had started practicing, yoga. First, my wife took me to my first class, just going to the studio, and really quickly became a really strong complement to, which is only natural to my meditation practice. So that started working together, and I think, you know, that in combination with just having some difficult times that made me really want to take care of myself. I never knew particularly what I struggled with from time to time, but eventually it was, you know, these anxieties that I had were really becoming a disruption to my life. And so eventually, you know, I had been in therapy first when I was a young kid, just because I had these anxieties, these worries, I would call them, but I could never pin them down. You know, I could feel better for a while, and, you know, be a couple of years without really being troubled by it, but then something would set it off again. And eventually, in one round of therapy, someone said, I think this might be obsessive compulsive disorder. To me, which sounded really weird, because it wasn't, you know, OCD as it's, you know, kind of portrayed in the mainstream. I wasn't washing my hands all the time, but was really obsessed with thoughts, and started to have compulsive behaviors to try to manage that. And this was all, you know, kind of coming to a head, all these things at one time, you know, having, you know, trying to find a direction for my professional life, starting a family, and just trying to have an idea of where to go with that, and really relying on these contemplative practices, my meditation, my physical yoga practice, to try to meet what was really troubling me. And that's what came through for me. I mean, it got to the point where I was like, well, what do I really want to do? I mean, it seemed kind of cliche. What do I want to, if I could do anything with my life, what would I want to do? And I just really always wanted to be able to apply my kind of spiritual inclination in some kind of useful way. And, you know, because I wasn't really finding what I expected or what I hoped to find from my artistic pursuits, I was just like, you know what if I did follow this thing that feels more intuitive and more heartfelt. And, you know, back when I lived in Salt Lake City, when I had been really committed to my meditation practice, I lived down the highway from a prison, and occasionally when we went south, we'd drive by this prison, and I would drive by and I'd think, you know what, I just had this interest or some kind of suggestion inside of me that the benefit that I was feeling from this practice that I had found and really committed myself to, I was like, you know, maybe it would be of use there. And I imagined, you know, maybe that's something I could do, but I just never really felt qualified to do it. So I just kind of kept it in my mind as this idea that I'd think of when I drove by, but never acted on it. But then fast forwarding to when I lived in Austin, and then again had this, you know, what am I going to do? And at this point, I'd been, you know, practicing seriously for quite a while, meditation, and then had really taken on a more comprehensive yoga practice. And I thought, you know, I could teach yoga, figure out, you know, a way to kind of share my, you know, interests and, you know, find a way to benefit, you know, other people that way. And then that was it. I mean, I was like, okay, maybe that's it. And so I looked for a teacher training. You know, wasn't familiar at all with that area of yoga, just because it had never been anything that I had any inclination, any conscious inclination towards. And someone said, "Oh, you should check out this teacher training," and so I checked it out, and it was kind of off the path. It wasn't based in a studio or anything like that, but it really resonated with me, and I decided to go that way. Took the training, and then the idea of sharing this kind of contemplative practice in prison came back, and I was like, and maybe this is because I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I didn't have any interest in teaching in a studio. I didn't feel really pulled to that or qualified somehow, but I felt like, I could take this into a prison. I could see that working. I didn't know anything about. I'd never been in a prison. Never knew anybody in a prison. Never knew about yoga in a prison. So I was looking in the newspaper right after I finished my teacher training, and there was a nonprofit in Austin that had just started, and they mentioned there was a great organization called Community Yoga Austin, and they were interested in sharing the practice of yoga with populations that otherwise don't have access to it. And one of the things they mentioned in the article was that they were trying to serve prison population. And I was like, that's it. And so I got in touch with them, and they said, yeah, we don't really have anybody to help us out with it if you are interested in doing it. So I hooked up with them, went in, and just did the best I could, and went from there.
That's a lot. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, how was the shift between architecture to yoga teacher? Was it like a sweet move, or was it like, you had to kind of take a big deep breath?
No, it was a bit of a. There was a bit of distance covered in it. I tried for a while to keep working as an architect and kind of ease my way out on the side, and that wasn't working out. And then started, it was when I moved to Austin, and I didn't have a job. I had to find a new job. So I kind of committed myself to finding something else. And none of the going in the arts direction that I was interested in, it wasn't working out. I was really trying, and it wasn't working out. So I had to, pause, and that's when I just said, what else? What could I do? And luckily I had a wife at that point who was working full time, and I wasn't, desperate in any way. And so it was a real blessing to be able to make a choice like that.
So when you walked into that prison and you were teaching, and you were in the prison, and you were doing the thing you had said when you were driving past, was that a moment when you were like, this is it?
Yeah, and looking back at it, it was, it just felt strangely comfortable. Like I said, I'd never been in a prison. I didn't have any familiarity with it. It was totally foreign territory to me. But I just was really interested in it. And so making my way in there, of course it was a brand new experience. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, but it just felt natural in a sense. I was happy to be there.
What do you think the interest was, particularly working teaching within a prison?
Some part of me says, I don't know. I wish I had a backstory where it was like, I had a family member that was in prison, or I'd really kind of seen what the prison system does, the impact it has on people. But it wasn't that. It was more of just a general recognition that my life had been I had been so cared for in my life. I had challenges like anyone else, and challenges that really felt threatening to me and to my life at points. But I always had people who took care of me. It was my parents, my sister, teachers, good friends, things like that. And somehow, I wasn't so sheltered that wasn't very clear to me that a lot of people, most people maybe don't have that. And so where I saw that the potential in my life was only because I had people that cared for me, and I was aware of the population that didn't have access to anything that I had access to, and I saw this as a way to give them access to that kind of care.
And do you feel that they received that from you? There was a connection from the prisoners and the people that you taught in the prisons to what you were offering, because you had that certain sense of care?
I think so, and it wasn't because I was a particularly careful person, and by that I mean I didn't have any special skill, and I wasn't any kind of yoga teacher. I mean, it was just, I knew I was ready to share that kind of thing, but my primary interest was just being able to offer whatever seemed appropriate. And I kind of laugh at it now, looking back, because I feel like a certain part of me, I was like going in undercover as a yoga teacher, but quickly realizing, and again, not because I had any kind of, particular awareness or skill or, mission to do this, but just showing up as a normal person, just showing up as somebody who, wanted to be there, and to spend time there. And yeah, I mean, the number of times, people are like, why are you in here? Why do you come in here? What do you don't have to be here. Why do you show up here each week? And the truth is that, I was really, I thought it was something I could do, and that was enough of a reason for me to do it, because I did have the opportunity. I had the life and an opportunity to do something like that. But the thing that of course solidifies it, and I think anybody who does this kind of work would tell you, that you're nourished by it as well. And I can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, it just, you quickly realize that you can have you can use your potential, as best you can to benefit other people, but, in the process of doing this kind of work, it nourishes you, and it takes care of you. And as much as any of the contemplative practices that I've done, meditation and more full yoga practice, as much as that's taken care of me, the experience that I've had in prisons and the lives that prisoners have shared with me has cared for me as much as anything.
So it's the stories, it's the care that's nourished you. Interesting, you've used the word nourishment a number of times. I'd like to know exactly what the nourishment for you is.
Yeah, I don't really use that word intentionally, but it comes up to me because when I talk about feeling nourished, I just feel like it's care. It's just being cared for. You know, if you're nourished, you're cared for. And I was always nourished in whatever way I needed it. I wasn't spoiled, but you know, I was always nourished. When I needed care, I was always nourished. And again, I think there are, even though I have so much faith in these practices that I have committed to and that I share, whether it's a tradition of Buddhism or a more general yoga tradition, you know, at the root of all those, you know, I keep finding, and everyone would probably say this is just an obvious discovery, it's just initially I needed to take care of myself, but then from there it was very much an interactive. It's life. It's of course it's interactive. You know, we don't do anything independently. It's all interdependent, and you know that quickly became apparent to me when, you know, I'm in there and eventually as I get to know these prisoners and share this time with them, and they, oh, you know, you've done so much for, oh, you know, this has really changed my life, or oh, I owe so much. You know, you realize that that's not really how it's working. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong to feel that way, and I certainly recognize the way that people have changed my life, but, you know, as much as, you know, I might have offered of myself, it all comes back and has completely nourished me equally as much. And yeah.
So, thanks, Geoff. What would you like to share with others that you've learned about yourself through all of this?
And I know this is a yoga discussion, so I kind of, part of me wants to pin it back to yoga and you know, put more credit there, and I don't say that meaning that there isn't credit there, because as I was just saying, I mean, when I look at my life, I look at all these, you know, miraculous, it's like this miraculous conglomeration, which is, you know, the truth for everybody. I mean, we all have, you know, completely mysterious things that come together. And we were talking a little bit before this, and I think I was saying, you know, I continuously pause, and I just have this feeling of how the hell did I get here? Right? You know, I was an architect, or I lived in America, or I, you know, was interested in meditation, and, you know, now I'm, you know, working in prisons, and how does that happen? You know, it's like the calculation. You can't do the calculation, and it just. I've been lucky enough to, you know, have maybe enough intuition, enough care, nourishment, and some really good opportunities that it all came together, and here I am in a place that I feel like I don't understand, but feel completely content and at home in at the same time.
Thank you, Geoff, for sharing that.
Welcome.
I appreciate
My pleasure.
it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.